Hello students, today we will learn important diseases caused by helminthics, namely ASCARIASIS and Filariasis. One day Raju complained to his mother about severe abdominal pain and diarrhea he was getting. Raju's mother soon recollected that Raju has a habit of eating soil and that may be the cause of infection. And she was absolutely correct. Stool sample of Raju revealed that Raju was suffering from a disease called as ASCARIASIS. But how did Raju got this disease? What was present in this soil that infected his body? Raju got this infection due to ingesting the eggs of ASCARIASIS worms. But how did these worms affected his body? Let us understand in detail about the disease ASCARIASIS. ASCARIASIS is caused by the causal organism Ascaris lumbricoides. Ascaris lumbricoides, commonly called as roundworm or helminthus endoparasite, that resides in the intestine of human body. Eggs of Ascaris lumbricoides can be found in the soil contaminated by human feces or in uncooked food contaminated by soil that contains roundworm eggs. Children often become infected when they put their hands in their mouth after playing in contaminated soil. Do you know these roundworms can also infect our lungs too? Well, this is noticeable when its infestation grows too much. So how does roundworms grow in our body? The swallowed eggs first are hatched out in the intestine. From here, the larvae move through the bloodstream into the lungs, where they get matured. After maturation, these worms travel to the throat. Sometimes they come out through coughing, or they are swallowed back into the intestine, where the mature male and female ascaris mate and lay their eggs, where these eggs are again hatched and the process continues. While some of the eggs that are present in the intestine will be left as the feces in the soil. We experience internal bleeding, muscular pain, fever, anemia, nausea, vomiting and irregular stools or diarrhea. The effect of Ascaris infection depends largely on the degree of infection. Presence of only a few organisms, that is Ascaris worms, generally has no effect on the human health. But if there is high infection of this disease, may lead to many problems. If there is large number of adult Ascaris worms in the single host or human, will obstruct the intestinal passage, since there are mass of worms that will block the intestine. That means Ascaris has the ability to grow in high number, thereby causing abdominal discomforts, severe pain as well as vomiting. The patient also suffers from impaired digestion, loss of appetite and nutritional deficiency. So how do we prevent and control Ascariasis? Since we know the eggs of Ascaris are passed out in the feces of the patient and infest soil as well as water. Thus, utmost care should be taken in the disposal of human fecal matter. Parents should also ensure that their children do not acquire the habit of eating soil. Vegetables and fruits should be washed properly before eating. The patients suffering from ASCARIASIS are administered by anti-helminthic drugs. Mosquitoes are one of the agent or vector to transfer disease from one person to another. And malaria is one of the example that we had learnt, right? So, are there any diseases that are transmitted by mosquito? Well, there are different species of mosquito that carry different parasites or pathogen and are responsible to transmit the disease from one person to another. For example, Anopheles mosquito, we know very well that it causes malaria and spreads the Plasmodium protozoa. Next is Aedes mosquito and the Culex mosquito. These three species are responsible to transmit various viruses or pathogens such as Zika virus, West Nile virus, chikungunya virus and dengue as well as malaria. But there is one more common disease spread by mosquito and that is Filariasis or elephantiasis. One of the important disease that affects human body. So which is the mosquito that causes elephantiasis? Which is the pathogen that it carries? Let us understand about it. Filariasis or elephantiasis is caused by filarial worms, a nematode or helminthic parasite that infects our body. The causal organism or filarial worm is Wuchereria bancrofti or Wuchereria malai. This disease is also called as elephantiasis, as this disease causes swelling of the affected part exactly looks like elephant's leg. Filariasis is transmitted by female mosquito Culex that acts as the intermediate host or vector. The organism filarial worm infects the mosquito and the mosquito transmits these organisms to the human. Filarial worms have peculiar life cycle. Filarial worms Wuchereria require to host mosquito, Culex and the human body. The adult male and female filarial worms live in the lymphatic vessels and lymphatic glands of human. Thus, human is the primary host of filarial worms. The lymphatic system is the complex network of vessels, tissue organs that maintains the fluid balance and also it helps to defend the body against the infection by supplying disease fighting cells called as lymphocytes. So we can understand here our lymphatic system play very important role and that is infected by this filarial worms. These worms are viviparous in nature. That means they give birth to young ones. Thus, the female will deliver young worms called as microfilariae. These microfilariae will enter into the deep blood vessels of lungs and at the night they will migrate at the superficial blood vessels of the skin and thus when the mosquito sucks the blood of the infected person, these microfilariae will now develop into infective larvae in the body of Culex mosquito that is the intermediate host or vector. The infective larvae will enter into the mouth part of the mosquito and when this infected mosquito bites the human, the larvae escape into the human skin, from where they pass through the bloodstream into the lymphatic system that is lymphatic vessels and lymphatic glands. and here they will grow into the adult in about a year. And this way it completes its life cycle. The patient suffering from filariasis, in the beginning the infected person gets repeated attacks of fever off and on. In the chronic cases, filarial worms block the lymphatic vessels, and this causes enormous swelling of the affected part, which may be arm, foot, leg, or even scrotum. Thus, it is followed by thickening of the skin and subcutaneous tissue. And due to this swelling of leg, the disease is commonly called as elephantiasis. Thus, the patient will have chronic inflammation of organs, that is, lymphatic vessels of lower limb, genital organs also will be affected with gross deformities. What are the control measures by which we can prevent filariasis? It is through eradication of mosquitoes and breeding places as well as protection against the mosquito bites. Once the swelling appears, there is no other treatment except surgical operation. This was all about helminthic diseases.